Welcome into the D2 Baseball Podcast. I'm Robert Fry, joined today with a new head coach at St. Martin's and a familiar head coach in Jacob Garsez. Coach, how you doing today?
I'm doing well. Robert, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you for asking, Coach. And we'll get started there. A little bit about your now enhanced background, one, and then two, what was the process of you and to end up becoming the newest head coach at St. Martin's University?
Yeah, so my background, I started coaching back in 2009, and then started coaching collegiately at Corban University in fall of 2011. Became the head coach at the University of Manalope Valley in fall of 2015. Was there for 4 years. Now, I took a year off from college baseball, and then was a head coach at Oregon Tech for 4 years. Last year, I was a head coach at Sonoma State, and the opportunity to come here to St. Martin's really fit myself and my family well. And we were, because of what had happened at Sonoma State with cutting the athletic department, we were looking for the right position and the right fit, and to have a Northwest position open up, and a great place to raise a family. With my wife and I both being from the Northwest, really fit us well. And so, just like a lot of jobs, I applied for it and went through the processes, and was fortunate that it was a good mutual fit.
And so you kind of talk about, being back home, but you did have a bit of a learning experience last season at Sonoma State. What was that learning experience like? And again, kind of touch a little bit more on the impact of, being back in the Pacific Northwest and leading a program in that area.
Yeah, for us at Sonoma State last year, every situation is certainly unique, but we were hired late, and we were hired after the admission deadline. And so, that created certain circumstances for us, but we liked our group and worked hard through the fall. And I thought we made some good progress throughout the fall and did some good things. In January, right before our season, they cut the athletic department, and that took us through a whole different type of emotion that we needed to navigate. And, now we had players that needed to go out and prove themselves and hopefully earn other opportunities, outside of Sonoma State, which is different than what four-year schools are used to working with. And, I thought we made some good progress. We developed down the stretch and played a lot better baseball towards the end of the year, which was great to see. For me personally, honestly, navigating the NCAA Division II practice rules. When you're at the NAIA, you have freedom to develop athletes how you please, and you have to be really precise with your time at this level. And that time last year really gave me an opportunity to explore different ways to utilize our time most efficiently. And I feel really well going into this fall on how we're utilizing our time and helping our players get better.
And, speaking of going into the fall, your official announced date was July 8th, per the team website. Now, talk a little bit about, once you did take over, what that recruiting process was in terms of filling out a roster and being able to just have, guys ready to go for the fall.
Yeah. Well, fortunately, we had a lot of returning players, and there were several signed players coming in at that point. And so we went out and we signed 7 different players to add to the recruiting class. And for me, recruiting has always been a numbers game. You can try to get as many on the phone that you feel like could potentially be good fits, and then determine if we are a good mutual fit for them. And so we worked through that process and found 7 guys that, we're excited about and felt like they fit our vision. But part of that process was also identifying the right coaching staff, to bring in. I just really felt like it was important to get this coaching staff right. And I think part of it was our location, but we had some solid candidates and some good options to choose from. And I feel like we really got our coaching staff right. And so that was a big part of, my process through through mid-July there and trying to get this rolling in the right direction.
And, speaking of that process, you mentioned the coaching staff. Expand a little bit about, not only filling out a roster, but then filling out the rest of the coaching staff as well.
Yeah, that takes a lot of time. I've decently connected up here, and that certainly helped. And we had some guys reach out and just started chipping away with phone calls and felt like we had several good candidates, but found the right fit. So I'm excited, and we've meshed well together and starting to work together well to progress this program.
And so with this program, you have a lot of opportunity, if you will, to kind of turn this thing around. What kind of excites you, being the leader at St. Martin's, to be able to turn this into a potential powerhouse?
Yeah, well, it's familiar territory for me. It's similar situation to when I took over at Oregon Tech with a similar previous record and similar time of the year, and an opportunity to build a program that has support and has potential to be successful. We were at a university that we just got a $1.5 million baseball donation, and so we're upgrading our facility, as we speak, and that's going to be really important to help us progress as a program. And we have good support from our administration at a school level and at an athletic department level, and people are motivated here on campus and in the community to help build St. Martin's baseball into a successful program. And like I said, I felt like we got the right assistant coaches in the mix as well, and it seems like this could be the perfect moment to really take that next step.
And you mentioned that $1.5 million gift. Talk a little bit, expand a little bit on the impact of that, one, and two, kind of, how that facilities can help build this program on into the future.
Yeah. I've never been a part of a program that's been, blessed to get this type of gift before. And, we're pretty blessed to have it, but essentially what we're going to do is upgrade our facilities. Being in the Pacific Northwest, having turf is important. That helps us manage the weather and provide more opportunities to be out on the field and get some game speed reps. So that'll be important. But then it's also just improving the overall look of our facility, and then creating a facility that our student athletes can be proud of, and we can be proud to bring recruits in. And something that being one of the few Division II schools in the Northwest and just two in Washington. This is a great, opportunity for Northwest players to play Division II baseball. And so being able to bring as many recruits as we can and show them the facility, get teams on our field during the summer so they can see it, is just really going to help us build our brand.
And, speaking of building the brand, the conference that you're in too, you present some, unique challenges, especially trying to play, one, playing with the Pacific Northwest weather, but two, trying to fill out a schedule. Kind of what are some challenges in terms of, playing basically the same team twice over, one, and then two, trying to fill out, a full 50-game schedule when it seems like more and more as years go by, more and more teams are going to play more and more conference games.
Yeah, it does create challenges. I mean, fortunately, we can stay on the West Coast and fill in our preseason pretty well, which is great. So travel to the West Coast is pretty simple for us. And as far as our conference and playing the same team twice, I think in a lot of ways it can be a real positive. It gives you an opportunity to evaluate how things went the first go around, and gives the coaching staff a chance to prepare their team, even better for the second opportunity. Similar conference size to the Cascade Conference that I was in at Oregon Tech, and so I'm used to this experience. But it does kind of limits us to some degree with the amount of teams that we play and we see throughout the year. And sometimes I know, at least at the NAIA level when I was there, playing other teams from a national ranking standpoint can be more valuable. But this is a competitive conference, and so we're excited to get to work and have an opportunity to compete with inside the GNAC.
And you mentioned, how to prepare a team, and, coaches preparing for a team. What, if you haven't already, what do you plan to do or have done to help prepare this team, throughout the fall?
Yeah, well, we're 1 week into fall team practice, and for us, it starts with outlining what our vision is, immediately for the fall and throughout the year and long term, and then aligning our processes along the way to achieve that vision. And so it starts with getting the right assistant coaches that can help implement it and do right by our players. But a big part of that is helping our guys, one, understand it, two, do it, within our processes and expectations. And three, they need to own it. We're looking for a team of student athletes that own our culture and own our principles, and they're really working hard to align their lives with our principles. And so when that happens, I've seen it with different teams before. Some really special things can happen. And so, we're just chipping away one day at a time and realizing that, if we're going to have a successful year, today's the most important day of the year, and we need to go out and just continue to improve how we operate on a daily basis.
And last time we talked, you kind of mentioned the difference between, being an athlete and then being a student. And you mentioned, like swinging the gate open at Sonoma State refers to, that time of, hey, it's time to lock in as an athlete. Do you have anything similar at St. Martin's?
We do. Yeah, I've brought that with me everywhere. And so essentially we call it our compete line, and everybody enters the field through the same gate every single day. And we talk a lot about being where your feet are at, and committing to doing right by the guy next to you. And so that line just symbolizes putting the rest of the day, good or bad, behind you, and crossing that line and getting ready to compete for your teammates and make today the most important day of the year.
And you mentioned, having done that everywhere you went, having coached in various collegiate environments, kind of what elements of your coaching style do you believe that have been the most adaptable and effective across, different programs across different levels?
Yeah. For me, every year is different. And so each program and university presents themselves with different circumstances that you're working with, good and bad. And each team is different, just a different group of individuals and personalities. And so I feel like, over the course of the last, what has it been, 13, 14 years in college baseball, that I've experienced a lot of different situations and feel like that helps make me adaptable, because my goal as a coach is to be adaptable to meet the needs of our players. And because ultimately, with every team being different, with a different group of individuals, I need to figure out a way to get the best out of each of them. And so I believe this year I've already pulled from every different experience I've had to work to create the right environment here.
And, you're listed as a certified mental performance coach. How does that inform your approach on player development and team building in terms of like a holistic athlete development?
Yeah, I'm just a firm believer that, you're only going to be as good as you can minimize distraction and be present minded and be where your feet are at. And so I also am a believer in teaching our guys how to compete. There's a big separation between development and competition in my mind, and we need to be able to be free and, kind of compete free of distracting thought. And so we don't spend a ton of time working on the mental side of the game, but we do integrate it into all our practices. And so just really trying to help them understand, well, how do you think? How do you behave? How do you react? And we have competition in all of our practices, different win the day components that we do, just, really trying to build the competitive level of how our guys operate and put them in environments where they have to respond to success and adversity, and learn how to do that successfully.
And within that too, on the recruiting side, do you actively seek that out, or what do you do in terms of, understanding a certain player, maybe you could see them once, maybe twice, of what their mental side is, one, and two, how they react to adversity.
Yeah. Well, I do feel like that's one of our advantages of being back in the Northwest and being more connected with coaches. Because in the past, I've had Northwest coaches tell me, hey, this student athlete would not be a good fit for your program and how you operate, or vice versa. So I think that'll be a real positive, because when you're recruiting on a small college budget, you don't necessarily get to see guys as much as you would like to, and see how they play. But we are also in close proximity to a lot of schools, high schools and junior colleges here. So I do see this recruiting being a lot more like Antelope Valley, where we can go out during the week, especially during the spring season, to the different NWAC schools here and see a lot of players, which will certainly help. But for us, when we recruit them, when we get them on the phone, when we get them here in person, we want to be as transparent as we possibly can about the type of program we are, because it's not for everyone. And I feel like by doing that, a lot of those guys will kind of eliminate themselves, and just realize that we're probably not the right fit. But if you're going to come to St. Martin's, and then you're going to come ready to work, and you're going to put the name on the front of your chest, and yeah, make that the most important, part of your process here. And then you're going to commit to developing yourself as a student athlete, because we realize that our overall success is about developing individuals, and helping them maximize their potential. So we're just looking to get the right guys. And I think the more openly you can communicate about who we are, it helps them kind of decide, yes, St. Martin's baseball is the right fit for me, or no, it's not.
And you mentioned the NWAC, and the uniqueness of the NWAC being a wood bat junior college league. What kind of takeaways do you glean that in terms of a recruiting perspective once enter a BB Corbat league?
Yeah, the game is definitely faster at our level in some ways, and because of the bat and the age and the strength gains. But there's a lot of talent in the NWAC, and there's a lot of programs up here that do a good job of developing players. And when you recruit them, it is nice to see them in person, because stats are different, right? I would say offensive stats can be a little bit down versus if they had a metal bat in their hand, and pitching stats can be a little bit inflated because they're not facing metal bats. So seeing guys and really getting a feel from coaches you trust is important. But there's a lot of quality players, up here, and we don't need them all. We just need to find the right fits for us and keep some of those Division II players up here in the Northwest.
And Coach, now to kind of transition into the St. Martin's program, what should fans, people in the St. Martin's community, expect out of this program?
Big thing for me is, we want to be noticed at how we compete and how we carry ourselves. We want to be a respectful group, but the pace of play and the relentlessness in which we compete, we want that to be noticeable. And so we're going to practice that way. And I would say a strong majority of the teams that I've coached have learned how to do that successfully. And I felt like in some ways we overachieved because of it, but I will never, I'll never throw a pitch or have an at bat, and neither will our assistant coaches. So it comes down to that player leadership and guys taking ownership in that, and leading by example, and then holding guys accountable and motivating them to do right by our program. And so for us, we want to be different at how we compete and how we respond, to adversity and success, and the pace and the competitiveness in which we play.
And a question within that too is, you mentioned leadership. How does leadership impact you as a coach? But then you mentioned players. How much of a boon is it to have player leadership within your program as well?
I believe that as coaches, we provide a vision, and we're lane assist. We work to keep them in the lane, but the players drive the car. And the best teams that I've coached have had top-notch player leadership, athletes that took ownership and the things that were important to us as a program, and made it their own, and led by example, and just did that the right way. And so that player leadership is, I mean, you have to have coaches that can supply a vision and create an environment for them to be successful. But that player leadership is just as important, because ultimately they're the ones driving the car.
And that's a great analogy, Coach, and really appreciate you sharing that. The final question I have for you now is, in terms of leadership, now we look in terms of mentors, who are some mentors that got to where you are today?
Well, I feel like from a early on standpoint at the high school level, I was fortunate to play for some coaches that were good culture guys and knew how to develop a culture and bring teams together. And from there, at the college level, I mean, both the coaches I played for, I mean, Scott Rogers at Columbia Basin and then Sean Humberger at the College of Idaho. I took components from both of them and how they develop practices and create a positive and competitive team environment. And then on the coaching end, I mean, Jeff McKay, who was head coach at Corban University and was a scout for 30 years. He was the first coach to give me an opportunity to coach at the college level. And from a player evaluation standpoint, from a offensive and pitching instruction standpoint, just really set the tone and exposed me to a higher level of baseball, which has been really valuable in my career. And since then, I've been a head coach, and most of the mentors that I have are people that probably don't even know I exist. I've read too many books probably and watched about every video I can get my hands on. And just the neat thing about our game is there's a lot of information out there, a lot of information on how people run their practices and how to develop players. And I just try to expose myself to as much of it as I possibly can. And there's a lot of coaches that have really helped me that I don't even know personally because of the opportunity to see videos and read books and listen to podcasts.
Coach Garsez, thank you so much for your time and insight today. We wish you and St. Martin's all the best here going into 2026.
Thank you. I really appreciate what you guys do for our game, and it's just a really important component. And so, we want to help you in all ways that we can. And thank you very much for giving me an opportunity to talk about our program.
And that is head coach Jacob Garsez at St. Martin's University. We'd like to give a big thank you to all of our regional tier Patreon members. We couldn't make it to the ninth inning without the support of all of you. You're the real MVPs, hitting a home run for the team every single time. Thank you.